All right, JHK here for the South China Morning Post, SCMP MMA. And joining me right now from across the globe is someone who I consider a combat sports renaissance man, Dan Hardy. Thank you, Dan, for the time today. How you doing?
I'm really good, man. Thank you for that compliment. I appreciate it. It means a lot.
No worries, man. Since I'm based in Asia, I know you have a special connection to China. It involves Shaolin monks, kung fu training. Could you tell us about what you remember from that experience and the impact it had on you?
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, I grew up training martial arts. Taekwondo was my first port of call, but then, as I got into my early teens, I started to diversify. And around this same time, the Shaolin monks were doing a tour and they were doing these stage shows and showing incredible feats of martial arts and resilience and toughness. And I thought, if I really want to be dedicated, to the martial arts, I need to go where they are. I've always been a person that goes to the source of it. So my dad helped me find, make connection with one of the Shaolin temples out in right up in the north of China. And I mean, it was an incredible experience. Flew into Beijing, then up to Changchun, then was picked up at the airport and drove through Siping, and up into the mountains. I spent a couple of months there training, Tai Chi, Shaolin. I did some internal martial arts as well, Bagua, Little Singi and stuff. And it completely blew my mind, but not only changed the way that I approach martial arts, but also changed the way that I view myself and what I'm capable of doing. I mean, we were training sometimes for 12 hours a day. So it taught me a lot about myself. It was an incredible experience.
You also have a broad background in Taekwondo. Have you ever thought of doing like a full reptile docu-series, Anthony Bourdain style martial arts tour around Asia?
You know what? We actually have it planned. I actually
Okay.
have one planned for at least four of the countries in Asia. I mean, the roots of martial arts are so deep, and a lot of people that are getting into MMA right now, they don't really fully understand, exactly the roots and the origins of some of the individual styles and how they've developed over the years, how they've mixed with one another and kind of stolen parts. And I find the whole thing fascinating. I mean, you've got a Bruce Lee poster right behind you just there. I've got a couple on the roof here. I've got one in my gym. My bookcase is a couple of thousand books on martial arts as well. There's just so much information out there, and we're really just scratching the surface with MMA right now. It makes me very excited to think what's going to come into the future, because we're getting Taekwondo stylists coming through now. We're getting Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu integrated into the Olympics. It's a good time for MMA. And then with the Performance Institute over in Shanghai, that's the UFC's really tapping into that market, and we're seeing some incredible fighters coming through. It's an exciting time for martial arts, but we've still got a long way to go.
Definitely got a long way to go. And I wanted to congratulate you on being nominated for Analyst of the Year at the World MMA Awards. What was your reaction to being nominated? Is this something that you look at and say, wow, that's, I've come a long way myself as an analyst?
It's very cool. It is very cool. It's a weird thing because obviously it's very it's very America centric and who's on the US broadcasts and stuff. So they're the guys that will always get the heavier votes. The guys that you hear every week, the likes of Michael Bisping and Paul Felder. They're great analysts. I like to consider what I do to be a bit more niche, and I know it's I know there is a growing demographic for that, but I'm not I can wrap up a fight in a couple of minutes, but what I really want to do is spend 45 minutes explaining all of the ins and outs. That's what's exciting to me because the fights are so complex sometimes, especially at the higher levels. I feel like it's an injustice to kind of wrap it up in 90 seconds. I really want to tell you about the fighters and what I can see, what I've learned. But more than anything, it's my knowledge of martial arts that's growing. That's why I'm enjoying it the most. I mean, the nomination's awesome, and to be in amongst those other great analysts is great. But I'm on a personal journey here with martial arts, so it's a nice compliment. But I'm still focused on what I'm trying to achieve.
Personally, like if I want to know like you said, the ins and outs of a certain fight, especially a big fight, the War Room is probably one of the best out there. It's so hard to digest MMA because there's so much content out there, right? But I do go to a handful of guys. You're one of the guys. And speaking of breakdowns, you did one recently of Rodtang for one championship. How did that all come together?
Well, I mean, obviously, one have got some incredible fighters on their roster, some amazing champions, and obviously with the mix of the styles, MMA, kickboxing, and Muay Thai with the small gloves, that there is a bit of confusion for the casual viewer. So, I had a conversation with one, and I said, well, look, let's celebrate one of the most exciting fighters on the roster being Rodtang. And I wanted to, like always, I wanted to really fully go through his career and show everybody, what he's achieved so far in one championship. I mean, he's looked not only, technically dominant, but also scarily tough. He walks through some of the firepower from his opponents and gives it back double. I thoroughly enjoyed researching him. I learned a lot. I've changed some of my training sessions to kind of try and start matching his pace a little bit, because it's almost like he's got that timer in his head that just keeps him working. And if his opponent doesn't throw back, he'll just roll over them. It's been really exciting. But what it has done is open my eyes to the rest of the one championship roster. MMA, Muay Thai, and kickboxing, they've got some great fighters on there. So I'm hoping through my channel I can help show some of the fans that are maybe more UFC focused what's going over in one, and what amazing fighters they've got.
Yeah, he's one of the ones that definitely start with him. It's a cascade of other guys coming through. Any breakdowns in the works right now?
I'm going to be working on a couple of things for them. I'd like to shed some more light on the tops of their division. So I'm gonna do some stuff on Petrosian and the guys under him. Obviously we've got Superbomb, we've got Murat Grigorian in that weight class. The atom weights as well. We've got some really strong fighters at atom weight. From Janet Todd and Stamp Fairtex, etc. So I'm kind of a bit spoiled for choice. I'm waiting on them letting me know about these upcoming matchups. I saw that Tawan Chai against Sita Chai has just been announced today for the end of August. So I might do a breakdown on those two guys, and I might also do some stuff in the gym as well, so I can show some of the techniques and break them down. So any young fighters out there that are interested in learning, we'll be able to get something out of that. But yeah, I'm all about it. I'm studying John Wayne Parr at the moment, as well as potentially Nicky Holskin. But my focus is across the whole roster. I'm enjoying researching one.
It's funny that you mentioned John Wayne Parr. One championship. They posted on social media, who should Chatri sign? You showed interest. John Wayne Parr raised his hand. You responded. Facing John Wayne Parr in a cage Muay Thai fight, what emotions run through your body with that possibility?
Excitement, just excitement. I mean, I've been talking about fighting for a while. I've had conversations about it. I've been offered opponents, and they've not been of interest to me, honestly. I mean, I remember being offered a couple of years ago. They offered me Joe Lozon. I love Joe Lozon. I don't really want to punch him in the face. They offered me Jim Miller, and I was the same. I'm like, no, like he's doing his thing. Plus, the idea of cutting to 155 is, I mean, the benefit with one is the hydration testing. So I could be, at my weight, lightweight, and feel really good. So that's another thing that sparks my interest in one. But the thing is with John Wayne Parr, he's one of the best to ever do it. If I'm stepping in to do something, I want the stakes to be high. I want people to doubt me. I want the challenge to be great. And that's exactly what I've got with John Wayne Parr. He's a veteran of the game, one of the most well-respected martial artists on the planet, one of the most experienced. And the only advantage I've got maybe is I've got a bit more experience with the smaller gloves and the cage. But we're going to stand in elbow range and beat the hell out of each other. I know that. I can see it on John's face, and I know it in my heart. So it's a perfect matchup, and then after that, maybe it opens the door for, a couple of other fights in one, maybe MMA, maybe kickboxing. I'm not sure, but I like the idea of having a few different fights under different rule sets, starting with cage Muay Thai.
Yeah, definitely. Have you had any interactions with Chatri or one championship pertaining to the John Wayne Parr matchup?
No, I haven't yet. I mean, we've connected and we've said that we are going to speak, but obviously with them having the event on Friday, the Battleground event, they were focused on that, and I'm sure they're still celebrating the success of it. I'll be speaking to them this week, but John and I have already verbally agreed. We've already spoken privately via message and said, this is the fight that makes sense. As long as we can, find a date and a venue, and it makes sense. It's a fight that I'm excited for. It's a fight that would be perfect for me to step back in there and to celebrate John Wayne Parr as well as, as a great opponent and a great martial artist.
It is a great opportunity for you to bring people that are not used to watching that style of fighting, the Muay Thai with MMA gloves. I think it's like one of the most exciting things you could watch, but people are missing out, and you get the opportunity, Dan Hardy, to bring your audience to that, man. It must be exciting for that too, in this fight.
It really is. Ever since I've been doing MMA professionally. I mean, my first year fighting MMA, I think I had 14 fights, but half of those would have been Muay Thai as well. I loved Muay Thai. If there was interest in it enough to have a big market around it, I would have gone in that direction. But just around that time, there wasn't, and MMA was only just really kind of taking off. But I could get MMA fights regularly, consistently, and I loved the idea of the small gloves. With Muay Thai, it was always these rules and those rules, and you don't know who you're fighting until you show up, and like it just I was pushed more in the direction of MMA when really my heart has always been Muay Thai in MMA. My favorites being the likes of Dwayne Ludwig and stuff. Guys that. Bas Rutten, guys that have been really good kickboxers and Muay Thai fighters that have crossed over. And the other thing as well is that this would be a real good introduction back into competition for me, because I'll only have to worry about the stand-up elements of the fight. And the thing that really beats you up and wears on you during training camp are the, people trying to take you down and iron you into the canvas. I've got some monsters at my gym. So fortunately, I'll be able to keep them in my range, which is where I'm very comfortable. So that's also exciting for me as well, just to be able to focus entirely on the striking arts, but still have the benefit of the smaller gloves, which it makes it a far more technical fight, I think.
When you see legends of MMA like Demetrius Johnson, Eddie Alvarez go over to one and not have that same type of success they had in North America, what does that say about the global market in general, not just Asia, but like just worldwide?
Well, I think it shows us that the competition all around the world, the level of MMA has risen. I mean, I was always a huge fan of Pride Fighting Championships, and some of the events, some of the fights that they had over there were, awe-inspiring. Watching Sakuraba work through the Gracies, or watching Vanderlei Silva knock him out. I mean, I always enjoyed the fact that there was a real depth in talent, and it was spread around the world. And obviously, in recent years, a lot of that talent and time and focus has been eaten up by the UFC. But that's definitely starting to balance out now. I mean, One Championship are growing at a rapid rate, as well as other organizations coming up as well. And, the interest in, these kind of celebrity boxing matches, I think, has helped. Kickboxing's on the rise as well. So I think generally the interest in combat sports is growing, and the level of talent across the world is spreading out. And the other thing as well, you've got some really strong gyms over, in Thailand, in Singapore, really strong gyms in China, in Korea. I feel like that the understanding of martial arts and the level is increasing so fast that now we need more organizations to get eyes on these fighters.
For sure. Now, I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about the UFC, but some of the Asian fighters like Zhang Weili, she will most likely be returning later this year, but no opponent has been determined. Do you think she should go get an immediate rematch against Rose, or should she fight another contender to build off that loss?
I mean, I don't see why she couldn't get an immediate rematch, but I think there's such a narrative at the top of that division with the people who have already faced one another. I mean, obviously, Rose is incredible, but we've got Joanna's up there as well at the top, who gave Zhang Weili a hell of a fight. I mean, who wouldn't want to see that as a rematch? This weekend we've got Karolina Kowalkiewicz making a return against Jessica Penne, which I expect it to be a good performance by her. Otherwise, she wouldn't be coming back. If we see the example that Miesha Tate set the other day, that's a good example of sometimes taking a bit of time out to grow and mature as a fighter is a benefit. So I think there are lots of interesting matchups for her, but I also think that she's going to be dominant at the top of that division, whether she's the champion or she's a top 1 or 2 contender. I also feel it would be the same if she moved up a weight class. I mean, she's one of the most interesting opponents, in my opinion, for Shevchenko, purely because I think Zhang Weili carries the power to make a difference. And that's, with my excitement that I go, that I give towards Jessica Andrade, the recklessness in her style is always going to cost her against Shevchenko. But with Zhang Weili, you've got the power and the speed as well as the technique and the accuracy. So I think she's got lots of options. I really do. I mean, I would like to see the rematch against Rose, obviously because it was it wasn't a long fight. We didn't really see them get to take any chunks out of one another. But it was decisive at the same time. So it's just a deep division, isn't it? It's such a deep division. But like I said, I do think she's got options, up at flyweight as well.
You feel like she'll pack even more of a punch at flyweight and be able to knock girls out even more in that division?
Yeah, I do. I really do. I mean, she's powerful for the weight class for strawweight, but then if you look at the way that she trains, she does a lot of that like real strong core training, stability training with kettlebells and holding positions. If she started to switch to more powerlifting, more plyometric stuff, that power would transfer very, very easily. And I also think, she's got like physiologically, you can see in her shoulders and in her legs that she naturally gains muscle very easily. She'd probably be a great powerlifter as well. But I certainly think at flyweight she'd be a real force to be reckoned with.
The Korean Zombie, he got back in the win column against Dan Ige a few months back. Many thought we saw evolution in him with him mixing in the grappling and slowing the fight down and winning rounds. Do you think the Brian Ortega loss was the best thing that happened to him?
I certainly do because Korean Zombie's been on such a trajectory, not only in the rankings but also in the fans' eyes. And that's something that carries him a long way. Is people love to watch him fight. He's got a reputation for having really awesome, exciting fights where he takes lots of risks and usually makes his opponents pay. Because he's in the pocket. The Moicano fight's one of my favorite knockouts where he just kind of hangs right inside boxing range and catches him with the counter. I think his approach with Brian Ortega was just a little bit too reckless for the opponent. And I think the fact that Ortega's got such good guillotines was also one thing that kept the fight in striking range, even when Korean Zombie wasn't having a lot of success. It was almost like he didn't have the option to adapt. But I think what we have to realize is when he made his UFC debut, won by Twister. He's got really good grappling skills, and you've got to think they've improved over the years. I think Brian Ortega is a difficult opponent to figure out, and I think he'd also grown a lot from the Max Holloway loss. So it was almost like Korean Zombie got a better version of Brian Ortega that he may not have expected. The Brian Ortega that fought Holloway, Zombie might have beaten him up pretty good, but this was a different version. So I mean, it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? It's the knock-on effect. One guy gets better, who makes the other guy better, and so on and so forth. And I think Korean Zombie's got potential everywhere. And the performance against Dan Ige shows that he is thinking about improvement and trying to round out his game a bit more.
Yeah, incredible to kind of get away from that brawler mentality. That brawler stigma is probably the best thing for him, especially when you reach that top echelons of the division and be able, and you have to win fights, not just finish guys.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. People remember the finishes because they're the things that go viral. You'll see wild clips from his from his fight against Leonard Garcia back in the day, and that's kind of what you expect from him. And I do think that sometimes fighters kind of get locked in with their nickname. Like look at Darren Elkins, for example. He's got the damage tattooed across his chest. There's no way he's going to be a sharp counter striker. It's just he's already decided his brand. And I think maybe the Korean Zombie, the idea of fighting like a zombie, as it maybe played in and worked against him a little bit because he's a very sharp individual. He's a very smart counter striker. And I think because he's willing to get hit, he puts himself in positions where he can counter much better than other fighters. I just think it's decision making where he needs to continue to improve. But we're seeing that. We've seen that already.
Sean Strickland, he had a great performance against Raya Hall over the weekend, but his comments after the fight stood out most. He said, "I would love nothing more than to kill someone in the cage." He said it kind of half jokingly, what kind of mentality, do you take into the cage when you fight? Is this something similar to that? Do you need to have that?
Yeah. I don't think you need to have it. I think some fighters do naturally, and I think some fighters work better when they step in there with that mentality. But I also think some fighters are better when they come in there to compete to win. That makes them more calculated. I mean, Usman's a good example. GSP, very calculated. They take risks, but only when it's calculated and necessary. I think there's a benefit to that, but then there are fighters that, and Derek Lewis is a good example. He's got raw power, but he's got an instinct to knock people unconscious. And that does kind of, to an extent, streamline their approach to the fight and makes it a bit more violent, you could say, a bit more, direct. But at the same time, I think there's a time and a place to talk about those kind of things, and I think there's a time and a place to, well, there is a time and a place to make jokes about those kind of things, because they're also the type of things that circulate on social media. I mean, I remember him saying that he was grateful to the UFC because he'd be doing, what did he say, something about cooking meth or something. I don't know. It's just inappropriate comments like that just kind of devalue a good performance, in my opinion. And I think he could have chosen his words better, but I also think he's a bit of an odd guy anyway. And I don't really think he'd fit in many other places, and I think he's aware of that and feels quite at home in the UFC, maybe a little bit too at home, and says first thing that comes to his mind. But he's an effective individual, and he definitely gets in there with an intention to hurt people. There is a benefit in that for sure.
Well, with media and being in front of the public eye, and the trash talk that's been going on lately, and people talking about families and religion and all this stuff coming in, in your eyes, what is going too far in the trash talk and the back and forth?
It's hard to judge, because some fighters are so difficult to get a rise out of that that like you have to go from one extreme to the next. And the other thing as well is you raise the bar each time. Like Conor McGregor, like if the first fight in the UFC he used volume position 1, the next one he's got to put it up to 2 just so it's a bit more. And then you end up running out of space to go. You end up running out of things to say without resorting to attacking people's family and beliefs and all those kind of things. I mean, I don't think any of that's necessary. I mean, I was known for trash talking sometimes, but only if I felt like it was going to get into my opponent's head. Against Marcus Davis, we played a lot of games to get inside his head, and it worked really well. But at no point did I attack his family or anything. I was just kind of poking fun at him. But then, on the flip side, my next fight was against Mike Swick, and I knew that it wouldn't work on him. So there was no point in wasting my time. I think sometimes these fighters, they keep raising the stakes each time to the point where they have nowhere else to go other than to say something inappropriate. But I think we all know instinctively. I think when we hear somebody say something, we go, yeah, that was too far. And I think we've all got that moral compass within ourselves. It's just some people choose not to listen to it. And I think that comes out even more when the cameras are rolling and, there's money to be made.
Maybe that's why we get the tweet and deletes by Conor McGregor, is because he realizes after he puts it out there, like, man, I got to pull it back.
Maybe. I mean, he must wake up some mornings and wonder what happened the night before, and then open his phone and just see absolute chaos that he caused with a comment that he made. I don't know where he's at or what's going on in his head. I hope he's all right. I hope he's healthy. But he's in such a high pressure position. There are so many expectations on him. These are the kind of circumstances where people start to lose their mind a little bit, and it takes a lot to keep control, I would think.
All right, Dan, thank you so much, man, for the time, and good luck on getting this fight put together in one championship. I can't wait to see it. Muay Thai with MMA gloves in a cage. You're going to be back, man. It's going to be exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Good talking to you.
Take a move in the ring. You can hit me with the words you fling.